Welcome to another episode of 30 Minutes in the New Testament. 30 Minutes in the New Testament is a 1517 podcast network podcast. You can go to 1517.org/podcast and check out all the other podcasts that are living over there. And while you're over there, make sure you check out everything else that 1517 is doing. So much stuff to check out. Just spend your afternoon checking it all out. Articles, read them, videos, watch them, academies, sign up for them, and donate link, click it. And then, maybe that one-time gift giver or that reoccurring gift giver, either one, we're happy to have you on board. And thank you so much to those of you who do that. Keep everything going. Guys, we are in Matthew chapter 20. Jesus has gotten done talking about some laborers in the vineyard, and some first will be last and last will be first talk. And so the whole point of this, as we get into this next section, is that this comes on the heels of the rich young ruler who didn't want to give up everything he had and follow Jesus. The disciples said, hey, we've given up everything we've had to follow Jesus. And Jesus says, yeah, I'm going to reward that. Also, let me tell you a story about how this works, though. I sort of reward everyone the same way. Everyone gets the same thing, right? So whether you get hired early in the day, that is, you're baptized into the faith at 8 days old and you never depart, or you're on your deathbed and you cry out to Jesus to save you, and he does. Guess what? Eternal life for everyone. Everyone's getting the same thing when they have their faith in Jesus. And Jesus is going to move on from that and just give you a little glimpse, again, how this is accomplished, right? Like, how is he going to make this happen for all these people who believe in him? Well, he's going to tell you what he personally is going to have to do to make this a reality.
Yeah, we're entering into a section again where once again you're going to see a contrast between the disciples being blind to who Jesus is and what he's going to do, while a literally blind person, or in this case two people, are going to very clearly see what Jesus is all about. So with that said, by way of introduction, we pick it up at verse 17. It says, "And as Jesus was going up to Jerusalem, he took the 12 disciples aside, and on the way he said to them, 'See, we are going up to Jerusalem, and the Son of Man will be delivered over to the chief priests and scribes, and they will condemn him to death and deliver him over to the Gentiles to be mocked and flogged and crucified, and he will be raised on the third day.'" So as probably many of your translations have above this passage, this is the third time in Matthew's gospel that Jesus tells his disciples precisely what he's ultimately here to do. That this isn't going to be an accident, that this isn't something that he's not expecting, that his plan is to continually head to Jerusalem. I mean, he is leading the ship. "See, we are going up to Jerusalem. Boys, this is why. So I can be delivered over to the chief priests and scribes, I can be condemned to death, and then delivered over to the Gentiles and be mocked, flogged, and crucified. And then, at the end of the day, be raised on the third day." And this time, we don't have his disciples rebuking him. We don't have any response from his disciples initially.
This time, he also gets really, he gives you more details, too.
Yeah.
I mean, he's not hiding anything at this point. He's saying, all right, this is how it's going to go down. I'm going to be delivered over to the chief priests and scribes. I'm going to be condemned. I'm going to deliver other Gentiles, mocked, flogged, crucified, raised from the dead. I mean, you have like all the things here, right?
Yeah.
So he tells them exactly what this is going to look like, and I'm sure they're like, so why are we going to, like, okay, then let's not go to Jerusalem. And this is the thing, is that no, Jesus is like, no, this is the whole point of me going to Jerusalem. It's not that we're going to Jerusalem and this is going to happen while I'm there. Bummer. It's the reason I'm going.
Yeah.
No metaphors attached. There's no analogies attached anymore. He's not saying sign of Jonah. He's not saying, like this temple will be torn down. He's not, none of that. He's just giving him the straight scoop here. This is, you need to not be surprised when this happens, because I'm going to tell you not only what is going to happen, but the order in which it is going to happen.
And this is him saying, the first, me, is going to become the last.
Yes.
In order to make you, who are the last, the first in my kingdom. That's precisely what he's doing here. But not everybody understands that. Not everybody gets this. And
These
so
are my favorite passages, by the way.
Me too. Because it's a very understandable, if not a good passage. But
I can see my
you-
mom
you-
my mom doing this.
you
being
can
like,
see any mom doing this.
"So, I know they're all, but really,
But do you feel like there's no chance that she heard what he just said? Like this is
No.
like what straight like if someone tells you something like that, I feel like you just walk in silence for a little bit,
Yeah.
right? Like, you're just like, man. So I don't know. Like this timing is wild.
well, that's what happened. Like everybody was being silent. Finally, nobody's talking. She's like, the perfect time. I
This is my
finally can
shot.
get his attention.
Boys, let your mother take care of this. I got you.
I got it, guys.
So it says, verse 20, then the mother of the sons of Zebedee came up to him with her sons, and kneeling before him, she asked him for something. Now, what do you think the chances are that her sons weren't even sure what she was going to do here? Like she literally is like dragging them to Jesus.
Oh, I don't know.
here.
They've asked this question themselves already.
I know.
So
It's hard to know.
yeah. I'm also always surprised to you get these little clues as to how large the gaggle that followed Jesus around everywhere actually was. Because in your head, it can just be like Jesus and the 12, right? But man, people are dragging their moms around. Yeah, who knows what's going on here?
Yep. And he said to her, what do you want? She said to him, say that these two sons of mine are to sit, one at your right hand and one at your left, in your kingdom. Jesus answered, you do not know what you are asking. Are you able to drink the cup that I am to drink? They said to him, we are able. You know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of when Moses gives the law and he lays down all the things that will happen if they're obedient and all the horrible things that will happen if they're disobedient. And then he asks them at the end, like, will you do everything written in the law? And unanimously, they're like, we
Yes.
will do it. We got it. We'll do
Yeah.
all the things.
You ever asked your kid? Remember when your kids were little, and maybe you and your wife the first time going out or something like that, and one of them's I don't know, how old is it? You're able to do that legally these days? I mean, 13, 14, I don't know, probably 21 these days. But and you look at them all and be like, okay, we're gonna be right down the street, like 2 blocks away. We're walking. We'll be back in 45 minutes. We're just gonna go get some appetizers and a drink. I'm telling from life experience here. And this is what I need from you guys. You guys know all the house rules, right? Yeah, we know them all, right? Now you're going to follow all of them while we're gone, right? We will do it. And then you come back and it's like,
House is a mess.
yeah,
shambles.
one of them's got a black eye. you know.
Yes. Yeah. So he said to them in response to them saying, yeah, we got you. We're going to do all the things. You will drink my cup, but to sit at my right hand and at my left is not mine to grant, but it is for those for whom it has been prepared by my Father. And when the 10 heard it, they were indignant at the two brothers. I love it so much. So not only were the two brothers completely trashed because they thought they could do more than they could, then the other 10 are like, dang it, why didn't we think to ask that?
Always.
Well, there's a bunch of stuff here. I mean, one, I like the directness of this whole thing. So like,
yeah.
she comes up and she just says, "What do you want?" Which is great. And then she says, "Okay, I'll tell you exactly what I want. Here's what I want. I want you to say that these two sons of mine are to sit, one at your right hand and one at your left in your kingdom." Now, in Mark, it says, "When you come into your glory."
Glory.
Right. And then also Jesus' response is, "Are you able to drink the cup that I am to drink, or to be baptized with the baptism that I am to be baptized with?" Which I like those additional details. And then Jesus says, "Yeah, are you going to be able to drink this cup that I'm going to drink?" And they said, "We are able." And then he says, "Oh, you're going to drink it, all right. But to sit at my right hand and my left is not mine to grant, but is for those to whom it has been prepared by my Father." There's a
little election talk there, by the way.
Yeah, and there's some interesting things here where he says, "Are you able to drink the cup that I'm going to drink?" And they say, "We are able," which we were like, and we kind of laughed at that and said, "Yeah, right, guys." And then, but Jesus does say, "Oh, you're going to drink it." Now, I think that there's like a lot of stuff going on here. So when you get to the cup, like Jesus is going to drink the cup of the wrath of God. I mean, you have this
That's
sort
right.
of like him alluded to this in the Garden of Gethsemane and this kind of thing. And so, like, are they able to drink the cup of the wrath of God? No.
No.
But then he says, "You are going to drink from my cup," right? You are like, so in other words, like I'm going to go and drink the wrath of God, and I am going to give you a cup to drink, but it's going to be my cup, but it's not going to be filled with the wrath of God. It's going to be filled with my blood, right? So this is the cup that is given to you to drink. I have to drink this other cup. And this talk of can we be at your right hand and your left hand? I don't think you know what you're asking then either, because when you look at the Mark passage and the question is, hey, can these two sons of mine be at your right and your left when you come into your glory? I think that we think like and I think the mother is asking, like, can they be seated up in heaven with you on your right and left hand? But what she doesn't understand is that the glory of God, the flaming center of the glory of God, is the cross of Christ, and there is going to be someone on his right and his left, and it's not going to be either of them. But there will be two people that are crucified on the right and the left of Christ, and like this is where Christ is in His glory. This is where God is glorified.
That's interesting.
And that has been ordained by His Father. He said, "That's not for me to choose. Like I'm not making that decision. And you're not going to drink this cup that I'm going to drink while that's going on. But I am going to give you a cup to drink." That's what I think, anyway.
No, I think you're right, Dan. I think that's exactly what he's alluding to. I think usually people see this. Yeah, I mean, usually people see this as also, an allusion to the fact that all the disciples will end up dying martyrs' deaths, etc. Besides John, and so when he says, "You will drink my cup," that's an allusion to the fact that they're going to face persecution, that sort of thing. And that might be alluded to here. But the fact that he says, "You will drink my cup," well, we know what his cup is.
Yeah,
Uh,
as you already noted, it's the cup of his blood.
Oh yeah, that Jesus is going to drink the cup. They're going to drink his cup, and John, of course, is one of the sons of Zebedee, and he, of course, will not be martyred.
That's right.
So I don't think that's it. I think that he's going to give them a cup to drink that is based on the cup that he has to drink, that nobody can drink but him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've always taken. I mean, I like the allusion to the people that are crucified with Jesus, and I wouldn't say that that's not it, but I've always thought of this. I mean, to me, I kind of whispered it. This is a bit of an election passage here. In verse 23, "You will drink my cup." Yeah, he knows that. He just predicts his death, predicts the order. He didn't say anything about the upper room there and what we call all the things that go on Monday, Thursday. Just prior to the set of events that he talks about in the previous verses. But he's going to give them his cup. He's going to give them the cup of his blood on that night. And he knows they're going to be there. You will drink of it. But then he says, "But to sit at my right hand and my left hand is not mine to grant." Well, the allusion to sitting at the right hand and left hand is who's going to be with him in glory. I think what he's alluding there to, and he gets more specific in other passages with it, and Paul gets very specific with it, is that those who are going to be his were chosen and prepared by his Father. And we'd sometimes say before the foundation of all things. And that's what for verse 23, that's what I've always taken from verse 23.
Yeah, and I certainly think that that's what the mother is asking for, without a doubt.
Yes.
Which is also funny because he just got done saying, like, "Oh, I'm going to have you like ruling over in glory. It's going to be you 12, you're going to rule over the Gentile, all this stuff." And his mother's like, "Okay, like
That sounds good, but can they be elevated even more?
Yeah, how do I up it? Can I get a little more than that? Like there is a right and a left hand here." And you're like, I don't know, in glory, because there's also an allusion to when you think about right and left hand when it comes to Jesus, you have a criminal on his right and a criminal on his left, but you also have like in the judgment, you have like dividing sheep and goats, and you have on the left and on the right, and this is the kind of stuff that has been used over and over again. And like you want to be on one side, not the other.
But she can't be asking that because she doesn't want one of her sons on the left-hand side.
That's not what
understood.
She's asking. Like she's asking for him to be in the positions of power.
She's thinking in glory, there's a throne.
Yes.
And there's two, advisors on each side of Jesus, on the right and in the left, in glory. One of those has got to be James, and the other has got to be John.
Yeah, and the answer I think is that like that's just not how my kingdom works at all. Like I mean,
I agree with that.
You don't even know what you're asking for here.
The picture in my mind is like a great throng You know,
Yeah.
his throne is there, but it's a great throng, and because of the way throng works, there are people all around him on his right and his left,
Yeah.
and his Father in heaven has been the one that has decided and called and will prepare that from the foundation of the world.
I do, by the way, like that this question backfires with the rest of the guys. Like the other guys are like, yeah, what, dude? Like, what kind of question is that? Like, are you trying to elevate
Yeah,
yourself?
what's Peter
over us?
doing? Like Peter's upset about that question. Like somebody would ask such a question. Yeah. All right, Peter.
So Jesus called them to him and said, "You know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their great ones exercise authority over them. It shall not be so among you. But whoever would be great among you must be your servant, and whoever would be first among you must be your slave. Even as the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many."
Great line, always taken out of context too.
It absolutely is. Yeah, go
This
ahead,
is
Scott.
the part where it's like I think it's in Mark 16. Steve Paulson will bring this up all the time, where what these disciples are always asking, and Jesus addresses it here, I think, is that they want to know who's going to be able to judge the other disciples, or or if it's going to be the 12 disciples judging everyone else. They just want to make sure that that's the case, right? They're always trying to make sure that they're going to be the one that's going to be able to have judgment over someone else, whether it's the rest of the religious authorities or the rest of the Jews or the Gentiles, or in this case, the sons of Zebedee, trying to make sure that they're going to have the authority to judge the other 10 in glory. Peter asks these questions pretty frequently too. I mean, usually after he does something really great.
Yeah.
And Jesus is saying that, oh man, he's like, you guys got the way this world works so locked in your head that you actually can't even conceive of what I'm trying to say when I describe the kingdom of heaven to you.
Yeah, I mean, this is really another great example of Jesus depicting for his disciples and for us the upside-down nature of the kingdom of God. It's
like
just
that.
not going to operate according to the normal principles of power in our world, which, I mean, this is very apropos for our time, as there are many people in the broader Christian world in North America that are very tempted to think that if Christians just get a hold of the levers of political power,
It's
that
gonna
they
work
can
this time.
re-Christianize the country or whatnot.
Yeah.
And it never works to the church's benefit. It always backfires. It always ends up in much more harm done to the citizenry than good. The church does not do well with political power because it cannot operate according to the principle laid out for us here by Jesus.
Yeah.
What did the medieval Roman church do with these passages? My Lord.
I think they found a way to minimize them, Scott.
I think
Not
they
that
must
that's
have.
unusual for us today.
Left them in Latin and didn't never tell anyone about them.
They did the same thing that Jerome did with that word repentance. Yeah,
Leave that alone.
That's not
Yeah.
really annoying.
I don't think this one was coming up in their lectionary. This is the whole thing. Is that all of this is Jesus just being like, okay, you guys have no idea how any of this works, and I think that's all kind of baked into his statement. Like, you don't know what you're asking for, right? Like you have no idea what it is you're asking for, and part of the reason that you think about the death of Christ. So like Jesus just talks about, I'm going to Jerusalem. This is what's going to happen. And then it's like, hey, can my sons be with you, like on your right hand side, when you come into your glory, when you come into your kingdom? And then he says, you don't know what you're asking. And what's the follow-up question? Are you able to drink the cup that I'm going to drink? Because that's what it would take. And the answer, of course, is no. I'm going to have to give you a different cup. And in the Mark passage, are you able to be baptized with the baptism that I'm going to be baptized with? The answer is no. He's going to give you a different baptism, right? And this is not how my kingdom works anyway. Like, my kingdom doesn't work by there's not going to be all these different positions, and I'm going to like set up this whole like hierarchy, and like we're going to have like power layers and all this stuff. It's like I'm king, and everybody else are children. Like, and this is how it works.
Yeah. I mean, to be sympathetic to the disciples, I mean, everybody else in their world who had any sort of authority when they would speak about what the days would be like when the Messiah came was telling everybody that it was going to look like David's reign, but even more powerful, that it was going to expand worldwide, and he would rule from Jerusalem on the throne in the temple. I mean, this was so common. This is just common knowledge for everybody raised according to Jewish teaching at the time, that it's very understandable for them to struggle to get in their mind what Jesus is saying, because they believe he's Messiah, but their conception of Messiah is so opposite of what he is laying down here.
Yeah, well, it'd be like if in our context, you'd be like, all right, man, so you're going to be king, right? Hey, can us two be vice president and secretary of state?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he's just like, no, that's not how this is going to work at all.
No.
But that's always how it works. Like,
Yes.
in our current context, RFK throws his weight behind Trump and he gets a cabinet appointment that he would have never otherwise had. J.D. Vance changes his mind about Trump, throws his weight behind him, vice president, right and left,
Yeah. This is the way that power works the vast majority of the time. Everywhere. Yeah. Except in the kingdom of God.
You're saying our American political system isn't unique, Eric?
It's not modeled after everything laid out in the kingdom of God in the Bible.
What?
Yeah.
Thought
Indeed.
this was a Christian nation.
Yeah, so you have this session just happening right now where you have the disciples looking pretty blind to like who Jesus is and what he's here to do. Meanwhile, the very next event that Matthew records shows another altercation with blind people, but a completely different result. And so it says, and as they went out of Jericho, a great crowd followed him. And behold, there were two blind men sitting by the roadside. And when they heard that Jesus was passing by, they cried out, Lord, have mercy on us, Son of David. Now, that is one of my favorite pleas in all of the Bible, especially considering the context, because they understand that for whatever reason, somehow or another, they have understood that the one who is the Son of David, the Messiah, they are calling him by his messianic title, is only to be pled with according to his mercy. That it's his mercy that they go to him with. That's what they appeal to.
You know what the best part of this is? The mother of James and John goes to Jesus, and he says, what do you want? And she's like, I need my sons to sit at your right and left hand. He says, no. And then these two blind guys say, have mercy on us, Son of David. And Jesus called them and said, what do you want me to do for you? And they said to him, Lord, let our eyes be open. And he says, yes. Like it's so great. Like
yes.
the mom gets turned down flat, and like two blind guys are like, "This is what we just need mercy," and he's like, "Done."
Yes, and I love the fact that they're kind of persistent about it, not just kind of, because we read in verse 31, the crowd rebuked them, telling them to be silent, but they cried out all the more, "Lord, have mercy on us, Son of David." And stopping, Jesus called them and said, what do you want me to do for you? They said to him, Lord, let our eyes be open. And Jesus in pity touched their eyes, and immediately they recovered their sight and followed him.
What a great day.
Yeah.
What's the lesson for us? The lesson is that his kingdom is always and forever going to operate based on mercy to the
Could you
sinner.
imagine seeing that day?
I can.
Yeah.
It would be amazing.
Yeah. I would love it.
No, dude, it's awesome. Like and he also is showing you like the sorts of people that are going to make up his kingdom and stuff too, right? He's done like this first and last talk like several times now, and now he's like, these are the kind of people who are going to be following me. People that are crying out for mercy, people that everyone else is saying, "Hey, be quiet! Like, this isn't for you." And Jesus is like, "No, that's exactly who I'm here for. Like, bring him over here. Let me get. What do you want me to do?" And I do like how like sometimes Jesus is just straight to the point. They say, "Lord, have mercy on us." They've already said that we want mercy, and he's like, "How would you like this mercy? How would you like this? How would you like this to be to play out?" And they're like, "Oh, we need to see, man." And he's like. Yeah. Let me put my hands on your eyes and make that happen for you. And this is the thing that, and I know we said this a bunch of times, but you're not going to find any passages where people do this sort of thing, and Jesus is like, no.
No, yeah.
Yep.
It
Jesus
doesn't happen.
responds to pleas for mercy.
Yeah, it just doesn't happen, man. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
if you're asking for mercy, like, Jesus gives it. Like, that's what he
Well,
does.
and it fits. We didn't spend much time on it, but it fits what his narrative has always been about why he came in verse 28. Even so, the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve,
Yeah.
right, and to give his life as a ransom for many. Well, when you're asking him to sit his right and his left, you're not asking him to serve. You're asking him to rule with him. And then these guys asked to be served. And like you said at the beginning, the explanation of this part, Dan, the answer is, of course, yes.
Few other things, few other notes here. I want to pay attention to the fact that we're told Jesus in pity. He had pity on them. And one of the reasons I love that is because he has the right to have pity on others, because he is the one that is above all. And secondly, I just always try to never run too fast past the fact that Jesus doesn't have to touch them.
But he always does. He always gets dirty.
He always does. He always gets his hands dirty, but he doesn't have to. I mean, we know he can just say, have sight, and they can. But he chooses to. He condescends to where people are at. And then the third thing I think we should probably just take a brief time to note is that if you go to Mark's account of this story in Mark chapter 10, you're going to notice that he doesn't mention anything about two blind men. He just highlights one blind man, blind Bartimaeus. Some of you are familiar with the name. And, you know, there's some that have suggested that shows that there's a contradiction between Mark and Matthew. But I'm going to argue that actually shows that probably the reason Mark highlights Bartimaeus is because that was a name that was known to the other disciples and to the early church. And so Mark is actually using it as an apologetic to say, this historical person that you people know, Bartimaeus, who was once blind, this is how he came to faith.
Yeah.
And so it's not a contradiction. It's just a highlighting of somebody that the people probably would have known. Mark does that. Mark will mention the names of people that have no particular significance to the narrative except to show that, like, oh, these are real people. Yeah.
It's a real person, yeah.
Yes. Rufus and Alexander, Mark mentions out of the blue, that were Simon's sons. Who cares? Except for the fact that they knew Rufus and Alexander. Yeah.
And you brought up pity in verse 34. It's interesting. I mean, that word is often translated, that Greek word is often translated as compassion. We have a negative sort of connection with pity, you know.
Yeah.
But to have pity is just to really, I mean, in its truest form, to have pity is just to have compassion on somebody that's going through something that you are not going through.
And all that is to put yourself in the place of the other person.
Well, and being, you know, a blind man sitting on the side of the road is pretty pitiful.
Yeah, it is pretty pitiful.
It's
Well,
pretty
That's why it's
especially
such a
back
great
then,
picture.
when you have no social networks to be able to, there's no entitlement programs for a blind
No
guy
status,
back then.
no standing, no money.
They're entirely dependent on others for their livelihood.
and it's pitiable, which is what Jesus does.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
Yeah.
you don't see the rest. By the way, you don't see the rest of the crowd having pity, even though it's quite
Shut up.
pitiful and a pitiable situation. They're just like, "Hey, man, like,
Hey, don't stop
take your
harshing my
lumps."
mellow. I'm following Jesus.
Yeah, and I think, and then we got to wrap up. But I also love that this story happens. That you got to remember that Jesus is on his way to do the most important thing that will ever happen in the history of the world. And yet, on his way, he's given two blind guys their sight as he is literally on his way to go die for the sins of the world. Still has time to say, I'm going to give you what you need. I'm going to restore your sight, which is, there's something that should tell you about sort of the heart of your Savior, which is quite beautiful.
The God of the universe is never too busy for you.
That's right.
It's great. It's great, man. That he's about to go suffer horrifically, and yet removes the suffering and the affliction of these two men on his way to do so, which is pretty great.
Yeah.
Well, all right. Well, we will leave it there, guys. Next week, we are going to
We're in a Holy Week.
Yeah, we're getting into Holy Week, man. We're getting closer and closer to the end of Matthew. It's taken us a while, but we got 28 chapters. We're going to start 21. We're going to get the triumphal entry next episode, so you don't want to miss that. I'll see you guys then.
Sounds good.